Oh, sweet sarsaparilla, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shot of Nostalgia, Saturday night's main event, Daddy. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, as always, not rocking the polka dots, but joining me, as always, my host with the most.
Live from No Sale Studios at the Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and joined for this episode, the 12th edition of Season 5, Saturday night's main event. And you mentioned, man, Dusty and Sapphire reunited, and it feels so good. We have Sapphire and the iteration that we all know and love, and we get the build towards this combination that's an unlikely pairing of the American dream, and really what they're calling her, the common woman, Sapphire.
It's the common man with the common lady, Daddy.
Absolutely epic. And, you know, we're climbing along in this journey, and we're popping through these years, and we're in 89. We're at the tail end of 1989 as we have the fallout of WrestleMania 5, as we discussed last week, and we're building towards, believe it or not, WrestleMania 6 in Toronto. And so much has changed from 1985 to 1989. 4 years is immensely, it's a time warp. And, you know, I think it is a good microcosm, especially, and we don't want to always bring this back to AEW, but of course we like to take a very holistic approach to how we view our wrestling. And as we look at AEW, as they approach 4 years in existence and comparing it to Titan Sports, their fourth year in existence, you could see a lot of similarities in their growth and the pattern of changing the way they approach. If you look at 1985 WWF to 1989, a lot has changed. Some of the presentation has changed, and the same could be said about the beginning of AEW to where we are now.
Yeah, no, it's insane, man. Very, very happy to just follow the journey, though. It's I know we keep saying it every week, but it's just so night and day from where we started it. And I mean, it just gets better and better every week, and the product gets better and better every week, regardless of how cartoony or, you know, over the top gimmicks are there. It's just still a quality ass product, man.
And I have to say, I mean, it's not just recency bias, but looking through the lens of, this is really the time period that I enjoy of WWF. I really very much enjoy this roster in 1989, approaching 1990 and 1991. I love this roster because there's a mixed bag of guys that can go work rate wise, and then still the over-the-top characters with just this very comfy blanket level of snuggle on the couch and watching this type of feeling that you get from watching this product. There's something very nostalgic about it, even if you didn't live through it. It's crazy to say.
Yeah, absolutely. You get all those warm, fuzzy feels with the blue cage and the red and yellow Hulkamaniacs and Macho, the King Madness, brother. It's so damn good.
So today we're going to review two events here. Saturday night's main event 23 from October 14th, 1989, from the Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati, Ohio, with the main event being Hulk Hogan versus Ted DiBiase with Zeus in his corner for the WWF Championship. And, of course, we're going to finish it off with Saturday night's main event number 24 on November 25th, 1989, from the Kansas Expocentre in Topeka, Kansas. Main evented by the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty versus the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard with Bobby Heenan in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And I don't know if exactly this is the last match for Tully Blanchard, but he's about to be fired for illicit drugs, and he never makes it to Survivor Series. And we get a final hurrah on what could have been with the tag team champions, the Brainbusters. It was short-lived. Like a star in the sky. They burned bright, but they did not burn forever.
It's all good. They burn brighter than most, and that's all that matters.
So as you know, each week we're going to go through all the tapings, the newsletters, and give you all the context to keep you updated on the happenings in WWF/Titan Sports. We have the 2 cards of review from 1989 as we say goodbye to that year and approach 1990. We say goodbye to the 80s here as we approach really what becomes 90s culture. And it takes a little bit to get into, because it still feels like the 80s. When it's 1990, it still feels very 80s adjacent.
Oh, yeah.
It's not till like 94, 95 we start to really feel those 90s Saved by the Bell vibes.
But I'm looking forward to it, man.
So we both recently watched these cards, and we both know truly a shot of nostalgia. And you guys are looking to watch along, you guys can go into the catalog on Peacock, check them out. They have these episodes in full. They're very bite-sized, nostalgia-driven pieces to watch. It's not a chore. I mean, we've been covering a lot of seasons of Shot Nostalgia here. This is our 5th, obviously. If you've been along for the ride, you know we've covered WCW 96 in full, ECW 1995, WWF 1998, Smoky Mountain Wrestling 1994, where there's an inundation of content. It feels almost like an overwhelming sense of, how am I going to watch all these episodes and keep up with the content, whether it be 2 Raws and a pay-per-view, 2 Nitros and a Clash of Champions, or Smoky Mountain Wrestling we were covering. I mean, seven weeks of TV in 1 week.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I have to say this season is refreshing because you pop it on, you watch it, and it's a quick watch and you can breeze through it. And a lot of times I can go back and watch things a second time to really do have my journalistic integrity to make sure I'm going through and finding the spots. This has been a refreshing season. That's definitely a different approach of how we've been covering these seasons of nostalgic wrestling.
Yeah, I love the quick watches because it really helps you concentrate on what's you find the details out. You see every little nook and cranny as opposed to cramming in 8 hours into one show. So I think we're having a great time here, man, and I'm enjoying the shit out of it.
And as we breeze through the different time periods, of course, as we mentioned, we started in 1985, and here we are in 1989 in 12 episodes. We're flying through all these different years, and we're eventually going to end up, believe it or not, in 2008, 2009, where they rejuvenate and reignite this Saturday Night's Main Event vehicle. And it's very appropriate, I feel like, with this new deal. And I was just talking about this on Wrestling Tonight, with all the money that NBC Universal threw at WWE to have them on. We know we're going to get 4 primetime specials on NBC. We don't know if they're going to be Saturday Night's Main Event. You'd imagine it'd be something similar. And why wouldn't you rejuvenate this vehicle? It's already existing. It feels special. It could feel like a tentpole event that could live outside of pay-per-view. And almost like we wish it back into existence.
Right? No, I would be so stoked if it turned into, a quarterly Saturday Night's Main Event, man. I would tune into those, and I'm not even a Fed guy.
So, I mean, obviously, we look back at the main event when we talked about Hogan and Andre, where they drew that immense rating that everyone's still chasing. They look at that as a high point of wrestling and pop culture. But if you had to book a modern day main event for let's say the first Saturday Night's Main Event, 2024, let's say March 2024, Mike Belcaster has the pen. You take 2 guys, have the match on NBC. Who are you going with?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Very, very tough one. Because I'm not 100% up to date, up to par with the current WWE product. But you got to have Roman on there, right? You got to. Yeah. Maybe not the main. He could be there for a segment, but you get some star power there, man. Get a John Cena versus an LA Knight. Something like that would be a killer main event for a Saturday Night's Main Event, man.
I think the biggest thing they can do, even if they go WrestleMania 40 and Cody beats Roman Reigns, I think you run that back. Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. That's the biggest thing they got there. It's the hottest act they have. And same thing with Andre Hogan. We saw it at WrestleMania 3. No reason you can't put it back in the microwave, heat it up, and it's still just as delicious the day after. You got to go Cody versus Roman. I think that's what I would go for NBC. But they have a lot of options, man. The product is hotter than ever. We have a lot of star power. You mentioned LA Knight, who's organically over. Looking at the Judgment Day, a lot of options. You could do a lot of fun things, and I think people are looking forward to pairing the current day product, which is fun and reinvigorating, with the nostalgia of Saturday Night's Main Event. It has potential to be something very special.
Hell yeah.
So let's get to the happy hour and go back in time and see what Dave Meltzer had to say in October of 1989.
Happy hour.
Oh, poor Dusty. They're
putting the polka dots on Dusty in that video. They're like, I don't want to wear them, and he's putting them on, and here we are in 1989. Dusty Rhodes didn't know what hit him as he came over to Titan Sports. But we're going to the October 23rd, 1989 newsletter, and we're starting with some stuff outside of Titan Sports, but I'd be amiss if I didn't mention it because it is something that is very appropriate, setting the stage of a name we all know and love, coming back to the forefront with AEW paying tribute to the death of Antonio Inoki and everything he contributes to the wrestling business. This is one of the crazy stories that added to his lore. And Meltzer led the newsletter with this, saying, topping off the news this week is the stabbing of wrestler turned politician Antonio Inoki on Friday. He said Inoki, 46, was at a concert in Japan and was called in front of the crowd to be a guest speaker when in the middle of his speech, a man who was later found out to be a former mental patient jumped onto the stage and quickly slashed Inoki on the side of the head, opening a cut from Inoki's ear to neck. So this news made several newspapers in the U.S. and the CBS News Network covered it because of Inoki's status as a member of the Japanese House of Counselors. As it goes, the injuries weren't as severe as reported in the country. In fact, after receiving medical aid, Inoki returned to the concert, went back on stage to assure the people that he was okay. He made his scheduled appearance on Saturday with the Japanese Foreign Exchange Student Olympics after being hospitalized overnight. Make your towns, brother. You guys got excuses. Sleep late. You're not feeling well. Antonio Inoki got slashed in the face with a knife, and the dude was so gangsta, he made his appearance that same day and the next day. So I don't want to hear the excuses. Antonio Inoki is the standard bearer of making mistakes, brother.
I love it. 100%, man. What a badass Inoki was, man.
And it just shows, I mean, honestly, if you look into his influence in the wrestling culture, but also his influence in politics, and that he was kind of setting the benchmark as we see some wrestlers go into politics, most notably, as we talk about here, the voice of Saturday Night's Main Event, Jesse Ventura, and bridging the gap of really just shows the reverence the Japanese culture had for Antonio Inoki, where it was even outside wrestling, where he was drawing crowds to speak, and he was speaking to a certain generation that even outside of wrestling, he has a following, and he was well respected even outside of the walls of just professional wrestling.
Absolutely, man.
So we continue here. The first Saturday main event of the fall aired on 10/14 after being taped last month in Cincinnati. Of course, we're going to cover that in full here tonight. It was the average slick production, and as usual for these NBC shows, the wrestling is far above the usual Titan standards. So Meltzer continues, every Saturday Night Main Event thus far in 1989 has had at least one outstanding match with the Rockers versus the Brainbusters, which he said is the best WWF match all year. In February, the Hogan Boss Man cage match that we covered last week, and last time out, the Savage Beefcake match with Zeus Angle starting. This time, the outstanding match was Tito Santana versus Rick Martel. So as I mentioned, from 1985 until 1989, the difference is there's a little bit of the work rate on the menu that we're starting to see. And of course, we're going to cover the Brainbusters versus the Rockers again from the episode tonight. I don't think it topped the match they had in February. You and I were talking off air. That's probably the best match we've covered thus far. But there's a little more emphasis on work rate and presentation in the ring, and like who can go bell to bell, not just these larger than life characters. Of course, there's over the top feel of these characters, Belcaster, but there's a little bit more emphasis on work rate, which we're seeing happen over time. Like we're only, let's say 4 years away from Bret Hart being the guy, and most of his appeal is based on being able to go in the ring as one of the more technically sound wrestlers in history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's crazy to think, like, we started this and there was a lot of hokey shenanigans in that very first 2 episodes, but we're rolling into some pretty damn good wrestling. I mean, the last couple of weeks, we've been spoiled, man. So I'll take it. I'm super excited for it. I love seeing the work rate sneak its way out into the NBC era, man.
So we also talk about the international dates. Of course, this is in the psyche of the wrestling fans today, with WWE going to Perth, Australia for Elimination Chamber. They're going to Berlin. They're doing the Bash at Berlin in Germany. They were in Saudi Arabia this past weekend. International dates are important. They've always been important for expansion for Titan Sports. And Meltzer covers them going over to Europe, running shows in London and Birmingham, England, Brussels and Belgium, Grenoble in France, and finishing Friday in Paris. And Meltzer says, I know the London and Paris shows were sold out weeks ahead, and they're already planning a more extensive European swing next year. It's always been the mindset to expand internationally and kind of breaking down the barriers of just running in the Northeast. And that's something that we haven't, obviously we saw WCW attempt to do it with Ted Turner taking over, and eventually they try to do a tour of more of the United States and expand outside of the walls of just what is usually the market for pro wrestling. But we see it right here. The vision of Vince McMahon is becoming quite clear. He wants to be more than just wrestling inside where they typically run and make their hay. It's really going out there and expanding and making their brand international, becoming the New York Yankees, becoming the Manchester Uniteds. They want to be well-known internationally, and that's what he accomplished. It started here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's crazy to think that something that oozes so much Americana is so popular outside of the United States. It's insane, but I love to see it. You love to see it. It's great for business, right?
And it set the tone for today. We know exactly it's as important here. We're getting main PLEs that are being covered there. And it used to be these tours, like these house show tours, where not really have any stakes in the canon storylines. And even if you go back to the Attitude Era and a little bit beyond with Ruthless Aggression, where they would do their England Rebellion shows, they do Insurrection, it wouldn't really hold any weight for what's going to happen in the storylines.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing these shows have a lot of weight. I mean, the Crown Jewel show, we saw title changes. Logan Paul won the U.S. title, and they're advancing storylines there. They're paying things off. It's not just this one-off glorified house show. These international dates are becoming hugely a part of what they're doing. Like even the Puerto Rico show and Backlash, they're going to be making dates all over the place, and it's becoming part of their brand. And that, again, started in here in 1989. It was unheard of for these wrestling companies to go overseas and expand their way. And 4 years into really Vince McMahon's new vision of what sports entertainment was, you could see the blueprint. Of course, we know where it goes, but you could see it start here, like Grenoble in France, Brussels in Belgium, Birmingham and London. Like the blueprint and where he was paving was right there in front of us.
100%.
So the next major show being Survivor Series, and Meltzer says nothing new on that. Nobody thinks this event will be anywhere near the pay-per-view numbers of SummerSlam. but he continues, but it'll be considered a success with a 3% buy rate, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. He said a legit 3 buy rate would gross $6 million. He said last year's show did just under 3. However, the inaugural Survivor Series did announce 7% buy rate. That figure might not be legit and probably is not. And it's also during a period when there were only 2 wrestling pay-per-views events per year. And Meltzer finishes up saying, if the past 2 Survivor Series are any indication, it should be the best overall show for action quality that Titan puts on pay-per-view all year. Still, this is a gimmick show, and the gimmick is no longer a novelty. Of course, we know the classic Survivor Series tag matches had a little bit of appeal 2 years ago when they first introduced it. Some of that steam is gone. A lot of what they're doing here, and we're seeing with AEW, again, not to compare the companies, especially within 4 years, but we're seeing them expand their market of pay-per-views. What started as, I think AEW started with 4 pay-per-views. Now they're doing, I think they're up to 8 at this point. And same thing with WWE, like they're adding them. It's not just WrestleMania. They're adding the SummerSlams. They're adding the Survivor Series. They're going to add the Rumble. These pay-per-views are recognizing that, hey, we may not be able to blow the doors off successfully financially, but I think if you do a lot, you start to bring in more and expand your audience and be able to give them more of, more product. And I think more content is king for WWE. And that is really the part of what AEW is modeling themselves after is they want to be able to pay off stories in a big way and have content that can live on a streaming service eventually.
Yeah, no, and it's needed. It's a necessity to expand growth in this day and age. Absolutely.
So, of course, Survivor Series is known for, being around Thanksgiving, and it has moved away from that. And it was interesting, especially in my research, because part of my fandom, it was always in lore. Like it used to be the day before Thanksgiving or the day of Thanksgiving. That was never the case. It was always a November date that was kind of around that season. But really, the interesting part, and I did my research on really what Thanksgiving was to wrestling. We'll talk about it a little bit as we get further, but this was an event that was based around the idea that people would be staying in for Thanksgiving. And Meltzer, even in 1989, recognized that in the history, because Jim Crockett Promotions was running a lot of these Starrcade shows on Thanksgiving, recognizing like, okay, families would be home, similar to football. I think that was the idea. People were staying home and watching football. But Meltzer says Thanksgiving is a terrible night for pay-per-view. Thanksgiving got a reputation in the early 1980s as the best night of the year with the big Starrcade cards and the reunion arena shows in Dallas. Is also the biggest night of the year for the movie industry. It was an excellent night for pay-per-view as well. He says, the problem is Thanksgiving is one of the worst nights of the year for TV. Attending a live show or a closed-circuit theater broadcast of a live performance is going out, which people want to do after spending most of the day on Thanksgiving. Watching TV or pay-per-view is still staying in. It probably didn't hurt Titan the first year because of the novelty of the wrestling on pay-per-view and the first-time usage of a gimmick made it must-see for all wrestling fans. As last year showed, that wasn't the case the second time out. I can't see the third show doing much better than the second. Growing up, Belcaster, like I understand, like I didn't grow up in a family that all watched wrestling. I was kind of by myself in that nature. Yeah, I just can't see making room for that, being able to watch wrestling. I wasn't a family that went out on Thanksgiving to do stuff. It was more football was on TV, but it was kind of if I wouldn't be able to watch it ever. So I always just like looked at it as I can't believe people will be able to order pay-per-view on a Thanksgiving. Do you think there'd be appeal for that? Like say for the Belcaster household, like would that be put on back in the day if possible?
Yeah. I mean, we went out a lot for family, gatherings for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But I mean, by the time you get home, I think we would make it home before 7:00 every year. I would be super stoked. I know me and my dad would have loved to, sit up on the couch, talk some mad shit and watch some pro wrestling on a holiday. We've done it for many other things. So I'd be here for it, man.
There's definitely a room for it, especially when they run these PLEs, and who's to say that Survivor Series that, and sometimes back in the day, obviously SmackDown was on Thursdays. They would air it on tape, so it would be on. There is room and there's like a market for it, of course, because football, it's one of the biggest days of the year for football, and it does monster rating. So I understand that it's inside and like you could actually see the mindset of it. But for me, running a pay-per-view on a Wednesday or Thursday definitely leaves a lot to be desired. I understand the spirit of it, but that's based in old type of mindset. As we mentioned, it was based on, Starrcade cards back in the day where live shows, people would go on Thanksgiving following eating dinner and then Dallas shows for the reunion arena. That is a tradition that went long by the wayside that, fans are not really used to seeing anymore.
Yeah. I mean, AEW just announced the December pay-per-view, which is 3 days after Christmas. I mean, I love the holiday spirit shows and stuff like that. They are great, and especially when the whole family's home, kids are off of school. It's great. I used to go to those after Christmas Raws house shows, here in Chicago all the time. I seen Owen Hart wrestle his last match at one of those, and they're very awesome. But to have it on an actual holiday, I think it's a little bit overkill for not only the product, but I mean, you got your fan base is way too busy to do all their other shit and squeeze in a pay-per-view, during the holiday season.
The other thing is too, and I was also comparing it to sports where people go, again, as I reference football, like the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys always play whoever they're playing on Thanksgiving. And there are people in attendance. They go to the game, they watch the game on TV. Same thing with the Knicks. The Knicks play on Christmas Day every single year. So there is a market for it where if you make it a family tradition, that becomes part of the holiday where it wasn't part of what we did, but maybe the idea was, especially in the inception of Survivor Series in the beginning years, they wanted to make it what people did. Okay, WWF is running a pay-per-view on Thanksgiving. That's what we do. We put it on TV. As dessert's going on, we're drinking coffee, eating the pumpkin pie, but we're going to get to watch 5-on-5 tag team matches.
Nothing wrong with that.
So we have WWF running its 4th annual King of the Ring tournament on October 14th in Providence, Rhode Island, with Tito Santana winning. Allegedly, Barry Windham, with the gimmick the Widowmaker, was a no-show, and Meltzer said most felt like he was going over. So going through the history of the King of the Ring with Tito Santana winning, they don't really reference this as winners of the King of the Ring. They kind of start their history, especially with, I think, 1993 as the inaugural pay-per-view. They were doing these tournaments earlier on than that, but I think they referenced the King of the Ring winners as being not started with a guy like Tito Santana. And looking at this right here, he said it's his 4th annual King of the Ring tournament. We have not covered any other ones here. Very interesting to see. This was something they did every year, but it did not have. It was almost like they had Jim Duggan winning the first Rumble. They didn't have the foresight to think what it was going to mean.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, who does? You start something off and you kind of test the waters, and going into it, you're probably not 100% sure if it's going to be a yearly annual event, and you're just testing the waters, man.
So looking at the history of, King of the Ring, and we're looking at it as well, so obviously we all look at Bret Hart winning in 93 as the first time that we're like, okay, that's the start of King of the Ring. People can picture Bret Hart winning, Owen Hart in 94. But looking at the winners, Don Morocco won the first in 1985, defeating Iron Sheik in the finals to win the tournament. Harley Race defeated Pedro Morales in the finals to win the tournament in 1986. Randy Savage won in 1987, defeating King Kong Bundy in the finals to win the tournament. Ted DiBiase won in 1988, defeating Randy Savage in the finals. And then we get to Tito Santana. He defeated Rick Martel in the finals. And they really skipped a year after that. They didn't do 1990. 91 was Bret Hart defeating IRS in the finals. And then it really kicks off where it becomes a pay-per-view, and then people start to look at it as okay, this holds some value. But any memories of King of the Ring being, aside from we covered in 1998, the amazing Hell in a Cell match, but as far as King of the Ring tournaments go, did that hold any weight for you? Do you feel like the tournament has any sort of prestige?
Absolutely. I always looked at King of the Ring as like an intercontinental championship. It was something that boosted somebody to the next level. So if you won King of the Ring, a la Stone Cold, Bret Hart, you would see them kind of go from that mid-card level to the title picture, or vice versa. They come from a lower card to the mid-card. It was always a boosting platform for talent, and I always looked at it like that. I always cherished it fondly. It was one of my favorite shows, one of my favorite events, and one of my favorite gimmicked pay-per-views. I love King of the Ring so much.
And it's not like seeing Barry Windham being a King of the Ring winner on paper, but oh man, that could have been a difference maker. But in 1989, like we were saying before, it didn't hold the same weight that it would in 1993. So even if he won, maybe it was a precursor to what he would have or could have done. We talked about him last week, signing over with WWF and being like, okay, Barry Windham could be that big bad against Hulk Hogan. He never got to that level, but no showing an event, which we will talk about here extensively. That's a complete no-no, because like advertising people, and that, that is something that if you can't be reliable for the company, they're not going to put any weight behind you. And that was a precursor for Barry Windham, that he was never going to be pushed strongly after this.
Yeah, it's such a shame too, because Barry's such a damn talented individual, man. I would have loved to see him skyrocket into something bigger and better in the WWF, especially not in those days. I mean, he would fit right in, top heel, you know.
So we have the Inside Edition doing a segment on the Dusty Rhodes Steve DiBiase case, focusing the attention on the story on DiBiase's remarks exposing the business and Dusty Rhodes' admission under oath that it was 100% show business. So the show acted like they had uncovered a significant scoop that wrestling is a work and it's not real, similar to when 2020 laughably used the same approach in its 1985 story. So Inside Edition thought they were breaking something, and this was, we talked about it before. Tongue-in-cheek, WWF was making it aware that this was show business. This was Cirque du Soleil, the circus, barn, whatever you want to say as far as TV goes. This was entertainment, and there was still this like lore, especially in the South and those other markets that were Midwest, that wrestling was still protected kayfabe-wise. They were using this as like Dusty Rhodes was under oath. He had to admit that this was show business, all dance, as the Jimmy King would say from Ready to Rumble. This was a much ado about nothing, but it was still showing that people believed that it was still real in some pockets of the world.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I said, it's for any fan, especially in the late 80s, man. I mean, it's got to be hard to, if you know, and if you don't, you don't. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the way it is. So I'm sure a lot of fan base was fairly disappointed to find out that it's just a dance, daddy. That's what we're doing. We're sitting here, we're throwing up, we're having dance, baby.
So in September 27th, 1989, the LA Times reported regarding Governor George Dukeman, I think his name is, signing a bill to strip the state athletic commission from controlling wrestling come January 1st, 1990. So Assemblyman Richard Ford of Gardena, who was on the Nightline with Lou Albano and Frank Deford a few months back, sponsored a bill and said, I quote, "It ain't a sport. It ain't an athletic contest." Floyd continued, also said it was ridiculous to have physicians present at pro wrestling matches and supported that by saying it would make more sense to have them at rock concerts. There's more violence there. And Meltzer says somehow I think injury rate among rock and roll stars would be relatively lower than that of pro wrestling. So this has been a conversation we've had in almost every season of Shot Nostalgia. The athletic commissions controlling and identifying the need to have this as a function of an athletic field. And if you look at the two different things being that it's a entertainment source, this is still the case. There's still these, and we talk about all the time with the independent wrestling scene, where these athletic commissions are still regulating and overseeing, where it doesn't make any sense. And this was already an issue here 30 plus years ago, and it's still an issue today.
Yeah, no, it's wild. But to say that you don't need medical personnel at a wrestling show is asinine, right? It's just it's insane, absolutely bad shit crazy. But the commission itself, it is over the top ridiculous. Maybe a reform of what the commission would do for sports entertainment would be a different approach. But I always thought it was so silly that you got to get a manager's license, you got to get your wrestling license, you got to go do all this shit. It's overkill for somebody just going out there trying to live a dream and make $1.
Yeah, and I understand the spirit of what Frank Deford was trying to say, but like you kind of lose me at like people getting hurt at rock and roll. It's defeat. And maybe back in the day with the style they were wrestling, but certainly today, it's hard hitting. You need doctors there. You need personnel. But, my thing is redefining the structure, that it's not lining the pockets of the athletic commissions to do nothing and to pay, to just pay to run shows elsewhere. It needs to be restructured. And if you're going to use an athletic commission, it should be keeping the talent safe, and the money should be going towards something, not just, like I said, just a license being paid to pay people off. That's not, and this was an issue here in LA. It's an issue in New York, and there's some outlets that don't even use athletic commission. So those places are able to run shows, but we see it run an issue too. Like we have the issue with some markets are unable to even have shows, and some markets are unable to have blood on their shows. This is a real thing that Rio's just had even in 2023. Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane that it held up so long. Out of all things to hold up over all these years, the athletic commission still running strong, man.
WWF has a new policy on TV tapings. At the last tapings, they had posters in front of the building saying that any banners that interfere with the taping of TV shows could not be brought into the building. They clarified it by saying they also checked all banners, not only for anything related to the NWA, but also see if the banner said anything terrible about the baby faces. If the sign is posted outside the building, Meltzer defends it, saying they are well within their rights at that point to confiscate banners because they are warning people ahead of time. Paranoia runs rampant. So we're going to talk about just a reader coming in and confirming this. we hear about this all the time. WWE will have someone take off an AEW shirt if there's a sign in the crowd. We've seen AEW take signs away. This is a tale all the time because you want to control the structure. And signs, as important as they were, probably more important in the Attitude Era, they're a little lesser than. It is on your product, and it's almost like, you're on TV. It's almost co-signing by having it on the hard cam side if something says something ridiculous. And I know that there's some signs out there that are edgy and people have their opinion on, freedom of speech at wrestling shows, but you have to understand it's a product you're putting out on TV, and you don't want to have anyone feel a certain type of way. And the one thing I'll say is that the NWA stuff that you see is similar to, AEW. You don't want your competition being promoted on your own show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had several signs confiscated back in the Attitude days. We'd always bring Nitro signs to Raw just to stir the pot, man. But it's their product. Of course, I think if there's a sign posted saying so, why not? But most of the time, there's no sign. You just walk in and they're going through your shit. They're like, you throw that one out. We're going to take that from you. You're like, oh, come on, man.
So I have a story of in 2002, I went to SummerSlam. And, obviously it was Lesnar versus The Rock. It was the return of HBK against Triple H. And I was the biggest Jericho fan back in the day. And he was a heel, of course, and he was feuding with Ric Flair. And it was the build-up where Jericho was doing this. He was pretending he wasn't Mongoose McQueen, and, he was two different guys, and Fozzy would play live, and I think Ric Flair destroyed all his equipment, whatever. Ric Flair was the babyface. So that's pretty much what I said. So when we went to the show, my friend Mike and I, we went and we brought a sign. We made a whole bunch of signs. We painted our chest RVD because that was what we did. I have a picture of it. My dad painted his chest. I forget what letters where we were. Right over his hairy chest. He had it was a bitch to get off with this paint that was sweat resistant. So we had our shirts off the whole show. Brought a poster board with just a big picture, a South Park wrestler of Ric Flair, and all we wrote was Dick Flair on the sign. And immediately couldn't get it through security. So that was my first experience where they took away the sign. And I love Ric Flair, but Jericho was my dude in 2002 we always joke around with it is obviously HBK made his return, and his the three letters of HBK and an exclamation point would have fit the four of us much better, but we decided to go with the Intercontinental Championship match, RVD instead. And it's just revisionist history is HBK was making his return for the first time since '98, but we went with RVD. Kind of shows where our mindset was as 14-year-old kids.
You gotta rep your Philly bros, man.
Exactly. Big RVD guys over there. But
hell yeah.
Meltzer further emphasizes this stuff about the confiscation of signs and shirts. He says one of our readers set out to prove that NWA would do the same thing and went to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, taping with a Piper shirt in the first row. And he said nobody said a word or cared. He went to Titan with a Four Horsemen shirt in the first row, and when the WWF officials were checking for NWA shirts, they overlooked him. So he had to tell them to take the shirt off. That shirt business has become a work by the fans at all tapings because people know that if you come into the building at a WWF taping with an NWA shirt and sit in the first few rows, they'll give you a free WWF shirt.
It's carny wrestling shit, and it's fine.
Why wouldn't they just make them turn it inside out? That's
the
way, right?
No, absolutely. But they still give out free shirts and stuff like that. I took Jameson to a Raw, and he had the Young Bucks Bullet Club T-shirt. They were absolutely not putting you on camera, not doing nothing. They didn't make him take it off, but they arranged the seats. They put the big guy in front of him. You know what I mean? It was stupid. So they made it work for them. But it was it was his first Raw. How are you going to do that to a kid?
Come on. But I understand the signs thing. There was an offensive sign. I think it was at Grand Slam with the MJF, and I think MJF posted it. It was an anti-Semitic sign that MJF. He referenced it on Twitter. I forget what the sign said. I don't want to even give it some publicity here, but
yeah.
The sign was on the hard cam, and I think someone took it away. But I remember seeing a picture of it. It made camera, and MJF definitely got word of it after the match, and they took it away, and rightfully so. It's something that shouldn't be out there. If it's something that is disrespectful in that way, that isn't just all in fun. There's the fine line of wrestling fandom and fun, all the stuff with heels and faces and stuff, and then there's just being an asshole that has no place in wrestling. So
yeah.
Interesting enough. This is stuff that's been going on, and people reference it. There was conversations about that happening at the NXT tapings where they're going around, and people say it's insecurity and all that, but you're controlling your product. You want it to look a certain way, and if the front row has a whole bunch of, in the Attitude Era, NWO shirts. And I don't even think they managed it because the product was so hot at the time. No one gave a shit. But
yeah.
You want to make it look like a home field advantage,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, I don't think anybody batted an eye during the Attitude Era about NWO shirts, because obviously it was a hot thing, and you couldn't force, 1,000 people to change their shirts, no matter what. So you always see them in like 98 and all that stuff. But nowadays, I get it. I totally understand why they do it. I'm not judging. I'm not hating on it. You got to make your shit look like the best it possibly can be, and if that's telling a few people to change their shirts, give away a few shirts, it works, man.
Yeah, there's also the argument too, like, it's like, just make your product better, like give me a reason to buy a shirt of the guy there. And I do understand from like the TV taping aspect of it, a presentation, you want to make sure that you're kind of controlling the things you can control. And there's some people that I think back to the Thunderdome era, where I think if people were getting banned for having either AEW merchandise or something in the background. Yeah. And one of the first times I signed up for the Thunderdome and I did the Thunderdome, I actually had this TNT Championship, unaware that I had it in the background when I signed up for the Thunderdome, and I was kicked off the stream because someone's monitoring it, thinking I'm being a troll or something, but it's just like part of my wrestling background here. In a different room, but the TNT title was exposed and they booted me, so I wasn't allowed on there. And then they banned the email where I could never get back on.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
That was a Thunderdome. I mean, people blacked that out of their history, but that was like, there was a waiting list and you get to go in the Thunderdome and they tell you when to clap and when to boo and all that stuff. And, but yeah, don't put your TNT title in the Thunderdome if it ever comes back. So on December 4th, 1989, we had our newsletter, and Meltzer said, Thanksgiving weekend of 1989 shows how much the wrestling business has changed over the past few years. He continues, Survivor Series 3 on pay-per-view was the big show for the weekend, but aside from the one show, business over the weekend was nothing to celebrate. St. Paul, Minnesota was one of the cities that made the Thanksgiving wrestling tradition. He says, this year with Hogan going against local product Mr. Perfect at the St. Paul Civic Center on the day before Thanksgiving, the result was a paltry 3,700 fans. MSG, which always sells out in advance, had its smallest crowd, 8,200 people in over a decade. Given the NWA's problems with drawing fans at a house show this year, nobody would be disappointed with the 7,500 that turned out Thanksgiving night at the Omni in Atlanta, but the 3,300 in Baltimore on Saturday and the 1,400 in Philly that afternoon on what is traditionally the best weekend of the year to draw fans has to be numbing. The rest of the WWF shows pulled poorly over the weekend, aside from the California shows and, of course, Survivor Series. So, again, we talked about the changing of the guard of traditions, and those are strong traditions. And, again, we go back to the NFL with Thanksgiving and the Lions sell out, and we also look at basketball. The Celtics play on basketball, and on Christmas, and you also have the Knicks playing on Christmas. Eventually, tradition becomes an institution, and it becomes what people do. And I think watching wrestling as sort of becoming a national market, both NWA and WWF, it was not becoming and not sticking. And I think if maybe they would have stuck with it, there would be some fan bases, especially with how rabid fan bases became, that if you would have stuck with this tradition and kind of waded through these lean years of kind of struggling through it, I think we'd be looking at 30 plus years of tradition and would dominate and make it sort of, like I said, an institution where people did this. And I think they gave up on it too soon, because there's definitely a market for it. Even if you want to run a smaller building, you don't have to run big buildings where, they're doing 3,700 fans in the St. Paul Civic Center. I think it holds 5 or 6. There is a way where you could do a small arena where you could have this intimate show, but still have a presentation on that weekend to make it a holiday special.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, people wake up early to tune into the Macy's parade. It wouldn't be any different if it was WWE, turkey trot or whatever you want to call it.
Or just Survivor Series.
Yeah, or just Survivor Series. But you know what I mean? It would be, I think it would be cool to like kind of have that, especially if you're at home all day cooking and doing stuff and taking care of your family. It would be nice to have some wrestling. I'm always down for more wrestling.
I guess the argument would make for the talent. Like, as far as the talent, they have to. Yeah. I'm sure they would rather not work on Thanksgiving. But then again, the NFL players, like going back to that, or on Christmas, the Knicks have to get ready for game day and get home. If you did an early show, like, and I'm not saying 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. like the Thanksgiving Day parade for Macy's. If you did a 1 p.m. start and end at 4, people could be home for dinner. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think that'd be something that would be cool. But
me too.
So Meltzer continues, the lone holiday wrestling tradition left, and the only legit box office success on the weekend drew 15,294 paid and 239,917 to the Rosemont Horizon, Chicago. The gate is the third best in the Windy City, trailing an NWA AWA combo show a few years back at the White Sox Park and the live showing Mania 2 from the Horizon with inflated ticket prices, which featured half a dozen NFL players in a battle royal. Some would see that Survivor Series took the edge off of the live crowds over the rest of the weekend, and to an extent, there's a validity to that. However, Survivor Series was on pay-per-view the past 2 years when crowds over the holiday weekend were much more robust than they were this year. So kind of apropos that they're back in the Rosemont Horizon this year for Survivor Series as we continue and talk about it here. And I'm not saying the stars are aligning for us. And Chicago's been historically a great wrestling city, and that is your hometown, true and true. And this is exactly what we see here. And it's become a stalwart of markets, and a lot of wrestling memories have been made in Chicago and setting records all over the place. And I feel like WWF at this time was just establishing the relationship in Chicago, which historically was an NWA, AW type of city. And truly it's been taken over from WWE. But I mean, over the years, I think it was left open for AEW to take it over. And I would still say I would say if you ask any fan of wrestling, when you think of Chicago, who do you think owns that city wrestling wise? I would say it's more of an AEW city than WWE.
No, absolutely. I mean, they come out here, they saturate this market so much compared to what WWE did. And WWE used to be here, 4 or 5 times a year. Now it's maybe like 3 to 4 times tops. We barely get any pay-per-views on WWE's end, but AEW is very gracious. They come here for plethora of dynamites. We get All Out every year. I mean, what can go wrong? We had Revolution for a while. We get a lot of good quality shows here in Chicago on both parts, man.
Absolutely, and we know that at any time, and the hotter product could take over. And Survivor Series is a hot ticket for sure. They're gonna have War Games, 2 matches there, so it's a hot ticket. And I think there was they kind of stayed away from Chicago for a bit because it was AEW territory, but now we're seeing a little bit more of the war that's happening in these different markets where AEW runs New York now. They're running Nassau Coliseum. They ran Arthur Ashe in Queens. Like that is part of, they're stepping in each other's territories, and that's good for wrestling because you want to make sure that you're challenging each other to get the better product out of each promotion.
Yeah, 100%. I remember the year AEW made its United Center debut. A few months before that, WWE ran the United Center, which is not heard of usually. Usually they are at the Allstate Arena, the Rosemont Horizon, but that one summer they did a show at the United Center, and everybody was like, oh, this is cool. So it's cool to see AEW getting that space, because I would love to see AEW at the Allstate Arena or the Rosemont Horizon. It would be amazing, but I don't think WWE is going to let that one slide anytime soon.
We shall see. But we have the Star Survivor Series from this last year in 1989. It was Curt Hennig, according to Meltzer, who single-handedly made it impossible to give the show a thumbs down. Meltzer says his performance in the 4th match of the card, which from start to finish was the best match. So yeah, I mean, Curt Hennig came with rave reviews. We saw he's a newcomer to the WWF. He's a guy who's being pushed to the moon. He has a gimmick that he was packaged with Mr. Perfect. It was very over the top, but he kind of leaned into it. He was the guy for the character, and I think there's no other guy who could have did the character to the level that Curt Hennig did. It was the perfect time, perfect place. And he's one of those guys we look at. I mean, him, Owen Hart, Roddy Piper, maybe the Mount Rushmore of guys to never hold the WWE Championship. Curt Hennig has to be at the top of everybody's list. He's a guy that should have, especially during this time, 1990, around that time, he should be the heel holding the championship. It just never happened, but he was stealing the show from 89 until, even all the way to 2002 when he came back before his death.
Yeah. No, he was amazing, man. And not necessarily underrated, but underappreciated, man. That guy deserved every title that you could possibly slap on. He should have been Ultimo Dragon. Like, he should have been rocking everything. But he was so good, and you even see it here. He's so damn good in the ring, man. I love all the Curt Hennig I can get, and I'm all for it, man.
So we have some issues with no-showing talent. We mentioned that Barry Windham. Barry Horowitz probably showed up, but didn't show up. Who knows? Barry Windham, a.k.a. the Widowmaker, didn't show up to some of the tapings here. And at King of the Ring, he was supposed to win the tournament. He was supposed to be at Survivor Series. But Meltzer was talking about the problem with this, and this extends to every promotion in the U.S., not just Titan Sports. Meltzer says it's how fans are treated when advertised talent fails to appear. Meltzer says one has to expect that injuries will occur on a fairly frequent basis in a business as rough as pro wrestling. Even in the WWF, which isn't as rough as some other promotions, the travel schedule alone can wear someone's resistance down to the point where they become susceptible to injuries. He continues, fans cannot complain about legit injuries, provided they are acknowledged and explained. But the promotions today cover all Americans who don't feel that they have to explain the no-shows, which leaves a lot of spectators with a ripped-off feeling. This is one of the critical things that killed the Von Erichs and the Gagne promotions and was among many no-shows on a pay-per-view. It is excusable, especially not acknowledging the substitutions or explaining them. It is inexcusable for a show that has been so heavily hyped and the last have been publicized for many weeks. So, and we've talked about this. Smoky Mountain Wrestling, they don't say who's there, and people are upset. They don't live up to stipulation. Someone's supposed to get their head shaved. A loser's supposed to leave town. If you advertise something, maybe in the moment you win out because people flood the arenas, but eventually, if you don't live up to stipulations, you don't kind of fulfill what you advertise, fans become disenchanted and they stop showing up. As they mentioned, the Von Erichs and the Gagne promotions were historic for that. Eventually, the fans stop showing up because they don't respect that anything that you say is going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's disheartening, and you lose the fan base's trust when you can't provide either what you were setting out to provide or a solid backup plan in case plans fall through, and it happens all the time in wrestling, man.
So we have 2 no-shows as well, and Meltzer says, I've heard 2 stories about Akeem. One was that he was injured, and another he had an ulcer flare-up. Either way, it was a last-minute deal, and it was too late to change the advertising. As for Barry Windham, he still hasn't returned from having the tumor removed from his chest. No explanation has been given either at this show or any arena that he's not shown for at least 2 months now for his absence. Continued to be advertised through the 2 months where he was unable to wrestle. Meltzer says neither of these 2 were even acknowledged in the passing during the show. And we talked about Tully Blanchard. He was fired. So as everyone knows, was fired by WWF 3 weeks before Survivor Series. And they never said anything. So as with Windham, Titan knew far enough in advance that he would not be there. But how many times did people from Titan complain about how Vern Gagne killed cities by doing this? So this is a problem. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and I understand social media doesn't exist, so it's hard for word of mouth to travel. But you're looking forward to a match. You're looking forward to someone participating, and the time comes and you replace them. This is tales all the time. I mean, he mentioned people get hurt. It's a rough business. It's the opportunity. But I think all us fans are asking is to be transparent. Because if you advertise something and it doesn't happen, there needs to be just something said out loud, even over the loudspeaker or put a poster on the wall for people that walk in. Sorry if you're looking forward to Barry Windham. He's just not going to be here. And most fans are going to be like, okay, I just respect that you told me. They're not going to turn their back and leave. But when you start to try to pull the wool over someone's eyes and act like that wasn't what was advertised, then you start to make people upset.
Yeah, 100%. Even if you were to pull some shitty angle where you're like, oh, Barry Windham was beaten up in the parking lot by so-and-so, and like, we're sorry that he's not going to be here, but we got a great card ahead. You know what I mean? Something along those lines would help.
So the other example he gave here was the November 20th issue of a Video Review magazine had an ad for Halloween Havoc tape, which will be released in video stores in December. So the ad listed the angle leading up to the Havoc's main event. It recorded the main event of Flair Sting versus Terry Funk and Great Muta, but also had a photo of Ricky Steamboat in the ad and listed Steamboat as appearing on the card. So since the angle they discussed did not occur in September, the main event was not booked until early September, and Steamboat was gone from the NWA at the end of July. Some major explaining is due from some people over the ad's content. So this was interesting too, because this was after the card was recorded. They advertised this tape for people to buy, thinking Ricky Steamboat would be there. But if you're following the product closely, you know Ricky Steamboat wouldn't be there. But maybe someone purchases it from the magazine that they want this Halloween Havoc tape. They think Ricky Steamboat's going to be involved in a major angle, and he wasn't there. That's a problem too. You have to go out of your way. And it's almost like the Elf, when they stay late for Christmas Eve and they're making the book and the ending of the book isn't there and you release it anyway.
Yeah.
You have to make sure you like kind of respect your consumers. And even if it costs extra money in production to like, all right, we already made these ads. We paid for them to go in these magazines. You kind of have to right or wrong. If it doesn't exist, you can't advertise something that doesn't happen, especially far out. Dude was gone from July. This is October and the event happened. So now we're advertising in November. The guy hasn't been on your roster since July. What are we doing?
Yeah, that's insane.
So the other thing is the WWF listed John Studd's name for SummerSlam more than 3 months after he left the promotion. So we also had John. And again, are people buying tickets to see John Studd? No. But like, why are we advertising guys that aren't there? I understand there's a delay. You have to advertise in advance and you have to send it away to these magazines. And there's a lag in time. I get that. But there has to be a way that these things are accurate. Because again, someone might be using their hard-earned money to buy something with someone's name on it. The guy's not on it. Ricky Steamboat, again, going back to it. Dude was gone in July. You advertise him in November. This is a lot of time has passed.
Yeah, that's insane, man. I very rarely have seen things of that sort, but that's I'd be pissed. I'd be absolutely pissed. I bought the Halloween Havoc thing seeing Steamboat in the magazine, no
again,
mention of him at all.
If you follow the product, like you knew he wasn't there, but I'm sure there's someone who purchased it thinking like, oh, I didn't get to see it. Maybe I'll purchase it. Ricky Steamboat's on. He's my favorite guy. And not there. But Meltzer finished up. Not a dragon in sight. Not one.
Not one.
Meltzer continues. Anyway, in the case of Tully, not only was he billed on TV up to the last minute, but on the pay-per-view show itself, his name was continually shown right up until the moment Bobby Heenan stepped in the ring, despite him being fired 3 weeks earlier. So they didn't want to bring negative publicity to him. Obviously, he was fired for the drug use. I believe it was cocaine or something like that. Bobby Heenan obviously stepped in his slot here, and the Brainbusters weren't able to compete as a tandem. That's an issue, though. Just be honest. Just be honest with it, especially for the build-up to the show. Because you look at it through a lens of, is someone buying the pay-per-view because the Brainbusters are there as a team? Probably not. But, just be honest up front, and they wouldn't be as disappointed that Bobby Heenan filled his spot. Most people were probably disappointed day of.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we finished up the newsletter. He said Sunday's New York Times, they had an article about the NWA in the business section. Those in charge at the NWA believe the only way for them to make it is to go WWF style. So a story in the Ad Age magazine even quoted Jim Herd as saying it would become, quote, more fairy tale-like. So Meltzer says, my own belief is that becoming a cheap imitation of WWF would be even more suicidal than their current course. Their current practice would be okay if they revise several aspects of how they tour and promote house shows. TV ratings and pay-per-views are doing just fine. The syndication and ratings, which tie in with local promotion of the house shows, are poor, as are the house show crowds. So, yeah, I mean, the spirit is there. They're watching the model work. They're watching WWF kind of take in the money. They're doing international dates. They're creating larger-than-life characters. They're surpassing where NWA was. There has to be frustrating for Jim Herd and for Jim Crockett Promotions to watch what they could be. But that's not who they are. For them to change into this sports entertainment level, and there's no way to do this, to be old school wrestling and then try to instill and change everything they're doing. You can't apply that formula. It just would come off as contrived and cheap.
Yeah, I mean, even early 90s WCW, where it had that mix of the old school wrestling, but they're trying to introduce characters into it. It fell short.
It was very cheesy. Yeah, he got
very,
Oz,
very
Kevin Nash's Oz, and then all that. You could tell they're trying to capture this magic dust that WWF has all over their product. Even the cheesiest stuff comes off as just it's home run after home run. And I think rose-colored glasses has created that, but the environment created a lot of these memorable moments, and WCW, NWA, that's not who they were. And I think eventually going back to the traditional format is what eventually suits them, because you want to be the alternative. And I understand there's always a market for that. And that's the fine line that AEW has to ride. You don't want to become WWE light. And I think that's always sort of the line you have to ride, where you want to be the alternative in a big way. And that might mean sacrificing some viewers and not casting as wide a net for the casual fan. But if you start to become WWE light, you're always going to be lesser than. And that's the same thing here in 1989. And it's the same thing in 2023. And, I was talking about this on Wrestling Tonight with, big show wrestling in a tag match. And I understand it's small things, but you got Jeff Jarrett and then Ric Flair signed to a 2-year deal. You're kind of towing the line. You don't want to be WWE light. I'm not saying they are, but there's always decisions that are made that you want to be like, let's stay within the spirit. And they booked Dynamite this week with MJF versus Daniel Garcia. That's the AEW I love. That's the alternative. That's exactly what we want to see. So same thing here. NWA, keep throwing it at the wall. We want 60-minute matches with Ric Flair. That's what you want. That's what you are. Don't try to be fairy tale like. That's not NWA.
No, and it definitely hurts the product, man. And I wanted to take a minute here. I don't understand the hate with AEW signing Ric Flair. He's Ric Flair, man. Guys.
I'm not. If you listen to Wrestling Tide this week,
if you
listen to Wrestling Tide this week, I was very complimentary of it. I just think in the full package of it, just kind of happened with the full, with the Big Show wrestling and then Jeff Jarrett. It's just the package of all that.
Absolutely.
Ric Flair is Ric Flair. He's Babe Ruth of wrestling. Having him at any time in your doors brings the prestige up of your brand 100%.
100%.
I think people are looking at the overall median age of the roster and be like, we have Big Show on one show, Ric Flair here, Jeff Jarrett wrestling. Let's kind of slow it down. I think people have PTSD from TNA/WCW 1999. That's all.
It happens. It's okay. But listen, I could confirm from just being at pay-per-views and hanging out at the hotels, and Ric Flair has been in talks for years. I met him in 2001 at my first pay-per-view for AEW, and he was there talking to Tony. So I knew it was coming. I'm excited for Ric Flair. I love Ric Flair, man. To see him take a bump, sure. Do I want him to work a match? Absolutely not.
For the WCW kidding me, love it. Because again,
yeah.
And I said this on Wrestling Tonight, bridging the gap and revisiting history that's been whitewashed by WWE, and being able to have this story of Sting and Ric Flair be tied to the immediate history of AEW, but also tying it to their NWA and WCW. I mean, go back to 1985, those two working, and then go all the way to the last episode of Nitro, where they are literally the main event of the last Nitro. They're interchangeably tied, and it's poetic to have Ric Flair on this final ride with him. And he's only going to help the roster outside of just Sting. Having Ric Flair there, the guy it's Ric Flair. Like, you have to just keep that in mind. I think it washes over people the impact he's had over the business, because he's so accessible. Like, he's on Instagram, he's doing rap music, he has an energy drink, he has weed, he's just, he's
got mushrooms, he's got it all.
the dude's almost like oversaturated in the market, and you're like, almost, because he's always out there, I think people have to take a moment and just look at the resume. Just look at the resume, who he is. He might be the greatest of all time, and that's not hyperbole. It is exactly who he is. For AEW to get their hands on him, I mean, for 2 years,
huge.
If he can give back to anybody, help MJF, help Daniel Garcia, just having him in house just brings prestige up. This is Ric Flair, so we got to keep that in mind.
I love it. I'm here for it.
All right, well, let's get our fix. Let's head to Cincinnati, Ohio, the home of John Moxley. Unsure how old he is in 1989, but he's probably watching Saturday Night's Main Event October 4th. Maybe he was at the building. Who knows?
He probably was.
Let's get to Saturday Night's Main Event number 23.
Get your fix.
All right, getting our fix here, October 14th, 1989. This was taped back on September 21st, 1989, the Riverfront Coliseum, Cincinnati, Ohio. Saturday Night's Main Event number 23. Our current champs are as followed. The world champion is still Hulk Hogan. He won it back on April 2nd, 1989. Intercontinental champion is Ultimate Warrior. He won it back on August 28th, 1989. Our world tag team champions are the Brainbusters. Won it back in July 18th, 1989. And our women's champion is Rockin' Robin. She's been MIA. She's been hanging. I have no idea where she is, but she's been our champ since October 7th, 1988. So, women's wrestling is kind of hurting at this point. And, she's unheard of. We haven't seen her, but she's won the championship allegedly.
It's all that matters. She's still rocking. It's not Robin. It's just Rockin' Robin. She's still rocking. She's still rolling. She's still going.
So we get the entry-level package. Roddy Piper leading us in. Then Randy Savage plans to be a royal pain in Jimmy Snuka's ass. And we also got Ted DiBiase and Zeus together. And we get Hulk Hogan referencing Ted DiBiase, and he said all the money that DiBiase has can't buy him the WWF title. So we get all these. I love these nostalgia-driven packages to open the show. It's great. Some will say it's campy, but it's just awesome. It kind of gives you the insight into all these over-the-top characters, and it's a nice snippet of like, all right, for the casual fan that's never watched before, you're like, who are these guys? And I have to see them wrestle.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes me appreciate Collision every Saturday so much more. I love the intros are just the best part of the show.
So our hosts are Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, and we lead into our opening match, Randy Savage with Queen Sherry taking on Jimmy Snuka. I'll let you take the lead on this match. Randy Savage opening the card. What else can you ask for?
Yeah, no, it was. Listen, it was great. It was a quick match, your typical Saturday Night's Main Event opener, but it had some impact behind it. It was good to see Macho King going after Jimmy Snuka. It was a fun match, good back and forth. Of course, Macho Man goes for the elbow, Snuka moves, goes for the Superfly Smash. Sherry gets in the way, always, busting out the shenanigans, but obviously Savage gets the win, brother. Yeah, it was a good match. It wasn't anything spectacular, nothing I would slap up a 5-star rating on, but I sure as hell enjoyed it.
We got the appearance of Sensational Sherry, or Queen Sherry, I should say. Put some respect in the name, with the loaded purse, dude. So Sherry grabbed on the apron. Savage nails Snuka with the purse. Savage gets rid of the evidence. He rolls up Snuka using the tights. So not only does he hit him with a weapon, he has to grab the tights for good measure. Randy Savage is in his heel mode here. we're on the emergence of eventually such a great run for Randy Savage, and post losing the title, post Mega Powers, all that stuff. It's so great to see him really on one of the best runs of his career, and I'd love to see him wrestle here. A guy like Jimmy Snuka just came back, but he's a glorified upper tier mid-carder. Randy Savage was the right decision to go over, so Randy Savage does try for the macho elbow after the match. Snuka moves, heads up to the top for the Superfly splash, and Sherry stands in the ring long enough for Savage to reach to his feet. He winds up leaving over Sherry, headbutts Savage out of the ring. Randy Savage is a fucking blast, and Sensational Sherry with him is such a great pairing that I don't think people appreciate enough. Like, the two of them work so well together that he's one of the rare times where you have a guy who's managed by a valet with Elizabeth. Everyone will remember that probably the most fondly, but to follow it up with being managed by Queen Sherry, they're an epic tandem that they fit so well together. Just the exaggerated emotions from the both of them, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I don't think heel Mach gets enough love. I mean, babyface Mach is always the thing everybody shoots back for, but I love this dastardly version of him. He's so damn good.
So we get a flashback, and they show clips of Zeus from all these 5 months where Hogan has been unable to stop him. He goes, they show him hit him with the chair, it unphases him, and Hulk Hogan is again facing the unenviable task of Zeus, and we know the payoff eventually. Hogan overcomes, but they're trying to dominate and make Zeus look like this powerful entity. But we lead into the Hogan versus Ted DiBiase match with Zeus in his corner for the WWF Championship. So this is DiBiase's insurance policy. So he tried with Andre. So he wants to finally get a hold of the WWF Championship for real this time. This is technically $1 million match, whatever that means. So it feels like it's just like there's no other stipulations unless I missed it. But we have Zeus in his corner, and Zeus, of course, gets involved. He is an X factor here. There are moments in this match, Belcaster, where we believe there was a chance DiBiase would go over, and has me wondering, like, again, we'll add to that Mount Rushmore that we were talking about during Happy Hour, where talk about Roddy Piper, talk about Owen Hart, Curt Hennig. Got to add DiBiase to the list of guy who's never held the championship. He's a guy up there that probably should have been WWF champion, and he wasn't. Had his opportunity here. He's had some close encounters. This match was pretty good. Went 8 minutes and 3 seconds. Interesting enough, we get a finish here where DiBiase gets caught in a small package from Hogan. Not the finish I really expected here. But yeah, there was some good stuff here, of course, where we get Jake Roberts involved and Virgil and some other stuff coming in here. Earl Hebner, the ref, getting involved. A lot of shenanigans. So, Hulk Survivor Series teammate Jake Roberts comes down to even the score when DiBiase and Zeus are getting in the choking and all this stuff behind the ref's back. DiBiase gets distracted by Roberts. We get another roll-up from Hulk for 2, so they tease the roll-up from the beginning. And then Zeus nails Hogan, comes off the rope with a comeback. We think that DiBiase is going to win the title with a flying fist drop and a flying knee drop. Near fall right there. He hulks up, and then we get the heel miscommunication between Zeus and DiBiase. As I mentioned, small package is the end of it. After the match, though, we get Hogan and Zeus having a standoff face-to-face. DiBiase hits Hogan from behind, and then he tells Zeus, get Hogan, I want you to take his goddamn head off. I pay you a lot of money. Take Hogan's head off. And Hogan gets his head twisted, which DiBiase and Zeus are standing tall. And Jesse Ventura, if you notice the commentary, it's almost like he's pushing the buttons to make Zeus do things. So everything he says, like, you need to hurt him, and then Zeus gets in the ring and hurts him. You need to twist his head off. He does go twist his head off. So DiBiase then puts on the $1 million dream, and then Jake Roberts and Damian eventually make the save, but Hogan's left laying here. They tried their best to establish Zeus. That's like really the byproduct. They wanted Zeus to look like the strong heel here. I thought it was cool to see Ted DiBiase standing strong, and I wanted to see more of Hogan and DiBiase. I think it's untapped potential. I think DiBiase with the championship it's a road I really wish they would have took, because, again, one of those guys that you could have told more meaningful stories instead of Hogan continuing to be champion.
Yeah, no, it's a shame that they didn't switch lanes. Typical WWE problem, right? But it's a shame that they didn't switch lanes just even for, a couple exits, man, and just let it ride out a few. I loved it. I thought this was really good. I loved that everybody is afraid of Damian. Like, no matter what happens, Damian's busting out. Zeus is freaking out. Andre's freaking. Nobody likes snakes, man. It's a weird business.
So we get another WWF flashback video package, the Roddy Piper and Rick Rude feud. They're referencing what happened here, which leads us into Roddy Piper in action. He's taking on Haku with Bobby Heenan. And essentially, the story here is, of course, Rick Rude's part of the Heenan family. Haku's also part of the Heenan family. So Piper is trying to just eliminate each member of the Heenan family individually. He wants to start with Haku. I guess he would be the lowest ranking member of the family. Still a bad, tough guy. I think you feel like he's a guy who's pretty well established. But this was a quick match. I mean, Piper was hitting some salve blows to Haku from the start, and those are rolling elbows for the uninitiated. So Roddy Piper hitting some stiff stuff in, but really a quick match. I mean, Haku delivers a shoulder breaker for a 2 count. He does try for the splash. Piper moves, and then Piper finishes him off with a belly-to-belly suplex, and that's the finish. And Roddy Piper's one of those guys too. And there's some guys, and Jericho later in his career had the ability to establish an impact finisher.
Yeah.
And I always look at like Stone Cold back in the day where he was doing a submission finisher before he was Stone Cold, and the emergence of the stunner almost took him to the next level. Roddy Piper's one of those guys who's never had a finisher that wasn't the headlock. He was a guy who had no impact finisher. And I feel like that you need an impact finisher. You could have a submission. Bret Hart was one of those other guys too. I mean, he never won a match with the double axe handle. It was always the sharpshooter or bust. I don't know. I think there's something to having both. And Jericho has a whole bunch now, but back in the day, it was just the Walls of Jericho. The Code Breaker was fairly new. And then obviously the Judas Effect now that he does. And he does the Lion Salt. But man, I don't know. Roddy Piper never had an impact finisher, and he did the belly-to-belly suplex here. It was weird to see him win a match with not the sleeper.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just a weird spot for him to be in the, like he could win. Technically, he's got an array of, he could do whatever the hell he wants to win the match if it's not going to be the sleeper hold. But to see Haku go down to a belly-to-belly, it's insane, man.
So, your classic Heenan family beatdown here. People love to see it. The Heenan family has a lot of heat on them, so seeing them lose, fans reacted strongly to it. It was a 3 minutes and 3 second match, so nothing substantial here. This is to establish Roddy Piper and move towards this Rick Rude feud. But we lead into our next match here. Tito Santana, fresh off his King of the Ring win, with the Red Rooster, Brutus Beefcake, and Dusty Rhodes, took on Rick Martel with Jimmy Hart, the Honky Tonk Man, Slick, and the Twin Towers, which is Akeem and the Big Boss Man, to a double DQ. So Martel, the whole Survivor Series team is to the ring. So they bring him, and then Santana returns the favor. So we got a slugfest to start the match, and this is just a back and forth. And Tito Santana and Rick Martel are two guys that can go. So they never really do a lot aside from mid-card stuff, IC championship type of level things, obviously tag team action. These guys are some of the best workers during this time on this card, and I think they don't get the respect that they deserve, especially Rick Martel. But Tito Santana was going out there, and I think people can go back and watch the WrestleMania 8 match with Shawn Michaels on a big stage. He and Shawn Michaels tore it up, and there's a lot to be said about this match back and forth, and really this rivalry between Tito Santana and Rick Martel, being that they're former tag team partners, never really had the formulaic payoff that it probably should have gotten, to the point where maybe if they were bigger main eventers, neither one of these guys went on to be a main eventer. Maybe they could have. Maybe at some point, Tito or Rick Martel could have been a main eventer, but never to be. But this was a great, great match. I mean, it wanted to be a DQ to build up Survivor Series, but I got to say, man, this was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed both these guys' work.
Yeah, actually, absolutely action-packed. But I could see Martel or Santana, either one of them, become into the heavyweight title picture and make it work. Absolutely. I mean, Martel was oozing machismo before Razor Ramon came to the scene, and Tito is bell for bell one of the top guys that they have there. He's really, really good in the ring, man, and it's a shame that we didn't get a good payoff for this, but still, very entertaining match, good build up for Survivor Series. I thoroughly enjoyed the shit out of it.
Well, shout out to Strike Force, because they're one of the underrated tag teams, and for a while, Tito Santana was still rocking those Strike Force tights for a bit. Obviously, Rick Martel got the remodel, no pun intended, with the purple or blue tights, and I think Rick Martel probably more of a chance to be a main eventer if they ever put the steam on him. I think he could have been a guy, especially in that time with the arrogance perfume and all the stuff that went into his character. He could have been a main event entity. Tito Santana, like work rate wise, 100%, but I don't know. I mean, maybe if they rebranded him or something, but these guys were gems in their time. I think they fit. They were a sight for sore eyes a lot of times and this is what we mentioned. As 89, 90, 91 happened, there are gems on these cards where these guys can actually go. And that's sort of what the fan base wanted. They wanted guys that could keep them entertained in the ring, not just these two monsters going at it, bumping into each other. They wanted guys that could go. And even seeing the shenanigans that happened made me psyched for Survivor Series. I know we don't get the traditional Survivor Series format anymore, but Bossman initiating this 8-man brawl at the end and seeing the double DQ. That's one of the best ways to build these matches, where everyone's just full out warfare and these guys that have no really association except for pride. Really, really fun.
Yeah, no, we love chaos. Chaos ends a great show. Chaos starts off a great show. Chaos sells feuds, man. I absolutely love it.
So finishing off our Saturday night's main event here for number 23, the Bushwhackers, Luke and Butch, defeated the Fabulous Rougeaus, Jacques and Raymond, with Jimmy Hart in their corner. This was a short match, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. The Rougeaus are absolutely dominated by the Bushwhackers, and there's been some talk on the Pod Foundation shows. I believe the Extra Cooler Boys and I believe Chick Foley, they talk about the Bushwhackers being a jobber team. Well, the Bushwhackers did the job on their own. They beat the shit out of the Rougeaus in this match. Double noggin knocker, batter and ram to Jacques, and a double gutbuster gets the definitive 3 count. I don't know if I've ever seen the Bushwhackers this dominant. And we got a hot tag to Luke. They looked out there and they got their shit in over the Fabulous Rougeaus and got the win. 3 minutes, like I said, they dominated them. And this was kind of a glimpse into the sheep herders back in the day, where they were kind of put some emphasis on them. But the Bushwhackers, getting the win here before we kind of close up with Hogan in this promo we kept. But your thoughts on this match?
Listen, I rarely seen a bad Bushwhackers match, but this was elevated to what I remembered from my childhood. I really, really enjoyed it. As you said, they dominated. It was quick, but it was impactful, and it was cool to see. The Bushwhackers, man. I love the Bushwhackers. Always love the Bushwhackers. I thought they were one of the hokiest, gimmicky tag teams in the world. But when they get in the ring and they deliver, goddamn, do they deliver?
So we close the show with Hulk Hogan. He's complaining about his neck and he's vowing revenge at Survivor Series against Zeus.
Like MJF, brother.
So yeah, he's holding his. It was reminiscent of MJF sitting down.
He was working it. He was brother.
Yeah, he's upset. This is emo Hulk Hogan, man. He's very emo. He's upset about everything that went down. He's the champion, but the world's against him. So
he's going to open up a bottle of Pinot Noir and throw on some Hawthorne Heights and just jam it out, brother.
Yeah, got Mayday Parade on deck in Hogan's car. He's just, he's just
Ohio's for lover, and so is Hulkamania, brother.
But man, I don't know. I just really wish they had Hogan fighting from underneath more. And I think that's the best Hogan we get, because the best thing is they're trying to make him feel like everyone's against him in the world, like the world's crumbling on top of him. But he's still the world champion. Why can't DiBiase be the champion and we get emo Hulk Hogan?
Well,
throw the skull in the face over the eyes like a scene kid. Come on.
A wise man once said, when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, you gotta be a man. You can't let it slide.
Turn it into a screamo song.
The Midwestern emo with
the short guitar hump from Mom Jeans.
I love it. I'm here for it. I'm going to find a Hogan promo and do some guitar taps over it.
Yeah, just the 3 chords just playing behind, and then, Midwestern emo with the voicemail in the background. Like a good front bottom song. But anyway, so this is a good, if you're looking to indulge on Survivor Series and you want to watch a compensation piece that goes along with it that complements it pretty well. This goes along really well at Survivor Series 1989. But if you're looking to check out some good in-ring work, check out Santana versus Martel, man. Like I said, this match was really good. This would be, I guess, the payoff to the Strikeforce feud. It's not really, because it's a double DQ. You'd want a little bit more oomph on it, but I really wish we would have got some payoff. But none of the guys went on to be a main eventer. They both kind of stayed at that ceiling and never they became WWE, memorable characters, but never a guy who's Rick Martel was the Shawn Michaels and Tito was the Marty Jannetty. There's always one guy that's a little bit better than the other. But even though Edge and Christian and Matt and Jeff Hardy, they've kind of trumped that as well. I don't know if that exists anymore, if you really think about it.
There was a while. Yeah, there was a while where, Jeff was the better one. But you could say over time, Matt really got his shit in and got better throughout time. And same thing with Edge and Christian, absolutely.
So we go to WWF Saturday Night's main event number 24 from November 25th, 1989, from Topeka, Kansas, the Expocentre. This was taped on Halloween 1989. Ballsy move to tape it on Halloween because people showing up in some costumes. They didn't emphasize it, but there were, of course, some people there that were just, in the spirit for sure. This was, and again, it's difficult, and we do this with Impact as well, where they tape months in advance. So
yeah,
especially post pay-per-view as well. That's, I don't know.
It's hard.
I mean, you have to have a lot of courage, especially when you're taping in bulk. Some things can change. People can get hurt. You have to call an audible, and you're still, I guess you can go retroactively and change. You could take matches off, whatever's going to air on TV, but still, it's especially with a lot of the leverage of you want to please the NBC executives, you want to show your best product. It's taping in bulk like this a month out is kind of, like I said, risky maneuver.
Absolutely. Super crazy for them to do, but obviously it paid off.
So on the in-between, we have our new tag team champions. Demolition won it back on October 2nd, 1989. So they're the only champs here. Interestingly enough, in the in-between, so this is what I'm talking about, bulk tapings, Saturday Night's Main Event number 23 aired on October 14th, and Demolition in between had won the tag title. So if you were at the live event and watched the show, the Brainbusters technically are champs on the show, but we know that Demolition, their run started on October 2nd. So kind of things that we see here happened a little bit with the Ring of Honor tapings when Willow won the New Japan Strong Women's Championship when she wasn't supposed to beat Mercedes, so she didn't show up at the Ring of Honor tapings with it. There's ways that commentary can whatever, they figure it out and wax over it, but some of the stuff kind of comes into play.
Absolutely.
So we have our intro into Saturday Night's Main Event. Warrior is planning to chop Andre down to size. We get a Warrior-Andre match tonight, which is going to be cool. Andre gets in. He says that Ultimate Warrior is going to be champion no more. Man, imagine Andre the Giant as IC champion. It's a weird optic, right?
Dude, absolutely wild.
So we also have Dusty Rhodes. He stole Boss Man's nightstick, and then Boss Man gets in front of it and saying he will have to serve hard time. And we also get the Genius getting some time here. Of course, he's getting a WWF Championship shot tonight. This is the brother of Randy Savage. Lenny Palfo is an underrated addition to this roster. I can't wait to cover this match. He's cutting some very philosophical promo here. Einstein, Plato, Socrates, and Hulk Hogan says, nobody knows what to do when Hulkamania runs wild on you, and Hulk Hogan is truly immortal. And we go straight into Saturday Night's Main Event, which might have been our best intro ever if you go with the combination of Warrior, Andre, Bossman, Genius, and Hogan. Like, I don't know if you can compare that to any other one we've seen.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Absolutely. What a step up from the show too. It was fantastic.
So we lead in, of course, with Vince McMahon and Jesse the Body Ventura, and Jesse Ventura's wardrobe this time is always emphasized. The guy has all his shit together, and he's always memorable. But we lead in, as we mentioned, an IC Championship match. The Ultimate Warrior defending his title against Andre the Giant with Bobby Heenan. So this is a nearly 2-year-long Warrior Heenan feud wrapping up with Andre the Giant. Lead us through the match. It was quick, of course. Andre's at the end of his run, so he is someone who's hurting. So, and Warrior, we know he's not the Kenny Omega. He's not prime Kenny Omega either.
He feels like Kenny Omega. You look at him, he thinks he's Kenny Omega, but he is definitely not Kenny Omega. And this is no Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. This is a very awkward match. Long for a Saturday Night's Main Event, too, especially for a match featuring Andre and Warrior. I'm surprised they gave it 8 minutes. It shocked me. But I will say there was some form of spectacle seeing Andre and Warrior together in the ring against each other, and that was cooler than the whole match itself. The match itself, it was okay, but obviously Warrior gets the win by DQ. But it was good. It was what it was. Like I said, the spectacle was more important than anything.
If you like rest holds and choking, man, this match is
brother.
This was rest hold city. This was population choking in the corner. And I understand Andre's very limited at this point. He is at the point where WrestleMania 6 is really going to be kind of his last hurrah in that tag match where he stands on the apron hurt. So
yeah,
we don't want to make light of it. Like Warrior and Andre, two of the biggest personalities in wrestling history. To see them lock up here makes you think of what could have been if, say, Andre, maybe go back to even 87. He was hurting during WrestleMania 3. But if you go back and have Warrior at his peak, because he's rising at this point, and he's going to peak at WrestleMania 6 in Toronto. If you would have had the Andre effect, where we get this match in Saturday Night's Main Event, and you kind of wonder what could have been after 7 minutes and 46 seconds. Not a lot here, but really, I mean, this is kind of setting the stage where Warrior eventually, he he defeats Andre. It's by DQ. It's not the definitive win you probably want.
Yeah.
Nor that I don't think we're ever going to get something like that. But this is eventually him joining with Hulkamania and then leading up to WrestleMania 6 where the two of them are going to collide. But they're putting a lot of steam on Warrior. I honestly went in this match thinking he was going to splash him and beat him. Like I thought that he was going to
Can you imagine?
Not lift him, but I thought he was going to hit him with the Warrior splash and pin him just because this is the rise of Warrior. And we're only a few months away from WrestleMania 6. I thought he was going to go in hotter than ever. A win's a win, though. You know what I mean? A win's a win.
Yeah. Imagine if they would have booked it like he gets him in a bear hug and Andre falls asleep because of the pain. Imagine how crazy that would have gone over for Warrior. And I mean, not that the guy needed any more wind up his sail because god damn did he have a lot of it, but I think they could have booked this to be one of those moments, and it would have gave Warrior a little bit better track to drive down.
Yeah, it's just, on paper, the match, like when you see it on paper, Warrior versus Andre, it feels prestigious, it feels awesome, but
yeah, really
though, at this point, like I said, Andre is on his last legs and he can't go. So
no.
It's almost, it's sad to watch him out there struggling. It looks like he's in pain. So
no, 100%.
We have the Genius getting a shot at the WWF Championship against Hulk Hogan. And this match, first of all, I want to give shout out to the Extra Cooler Boys. They covered this match in depth. And I believe, after I went back and watched this match when they did the podcast, and great episode, go and check it out in their archives. I went back and watched this, and I believe this was the genesis of wanting to do Saturday Night's Main Event because I was thoroughly entertained by this match. The randomness of the Genius getting a WWF Championship match. To me, this is everything Saturday Night's Main Event is about. This just feels awesome, feels nostalgic, feels random enough, but makes sense sequentially with what they're doing on TV. And Hulkamania, as we know, has taken on every comer, every monster that this roster has, and now he's battling a guy he's never had to battle against, and it's the Genius. I mean, Genius has been a jobber, though. Like, he's been enhancement talent. But for whatever reason, he gets the better of Hogan in some of this match because, he's baffling Hogan by doing handstands and kip-ups, and he's dancing. And this reminds me a lot of, if you go back in the day, and I know I'm digging deep if you guys are not familiar with the ROH catalog, but Bryan Danielson and Chris Hero had a match where Hero's prancing around the ring doing flips, and Danielson's just having enough, and he just goes absolutely wild on him and kind of unlocks a different side in frustration. So Hulk Hogan goes nuts on the Genius after he finally catches him. Like, you're not taking this match seriously. Then Mr. Perfect walks down the ringside and he sticks his gum on Hulk Hogan's title belt, which is big. I mean, he claims Hogan's not perfect, and Hulk Hogan is focused on perfect at ringside, which is a distraction. So that is pretty much his downfall of this match, where Hogan is at ringside with Genius, and we see a lot of stuff going on. Perfect is definitely getting involved, and you can totally see that Mr. Perfect is the guy they're focusing on here. But Perfect blasts Hogan with the title belt and knocks him out cold outside, forces Hogan to get counted out. Poffo wins 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Hogan has only lost one other time on Saturday Night's Main Event, which was to King Kong Bundy, the Saturday Night's Main Event after the first Survivor Series, also by countout. We haven't seen Hogan get pinned, but to be put in the category of King Kong Bundy beat him and eventually hospitalized him, and now the Genius beat him by countout. And this also, outside of just being a lot of fun and just absolutely amazing, this is sports entertainment at its best. It makes Perfect immediately be a main event player because he thwarted Hulk Hogan, who's usually unstoppable, by having him lose to the Genius. You don't know exactly what else is going to happen because Mr. Perfect's undefeated. Yes, he hasn't beaten anyone that's substantial on the roster quite yet, but after the match, Mr. Perfect and Genius steal the title belt too. This was fucking awesome. Like, this is to me personified exactly what I want to see in my Saturday Night's Main Event. And seeing the Genius win by countout, I know it's not pinfall, but still awesome stuff. This was perfectly booked, and I have to be I'm so complimentary of everything they did here.
No, absolutely. It's cool to see more of Lanny Poffo because it's like you said, he was basically a jobber, but seeing him in the spotlight elevated him. He was very important in this match. He did outstanding. I thoroughly enjoyed the shit out of it. But having Mr. Perfect come out, distraction, do the gum on the title belt, you're setting him up for the best run of his life. And the fact that he has not had a world title run is just it's mind blowing. Like, this guy is so damn good, and I'm glad that they elevated him so quickly, because if he didn't, we might not be talking about Mr. Perfect in such lore today as we do. It's crazy.
Yeah, this match was awesome too. And you mentioned before, Lenny Poffo did some very, very impressive things in the ring. And I understand for the fans that were probably watching during this time in '89 that he's looked at as enhancement talent. He's always on the losing end of things. But the athleticism, you couldn't help but be impressed by everything he was doing. And maybe it's the Mr. Perfect rub, kayfabe-wise, that he's teaching him things. But there were moments he got the better of Hogan. And even though he lost, and eventually when Hogan went nuts and beat him up for being frustrated, he is the genius, and he outsmarted Hulk Hogan, who's the WWF champion. And yes, you can't win the title on a DQ or a count-out. He got a count-out victory. And he'll forever have a win over Hogan, and it's a big deal. We have 24 episodes so far in the docket of Saturday Night's Main Event, and he's only lost one other time. It's against King Kong Bundy, who, I would say he's a pantheon of main eventer, not a WWF champion, but still a guy who's up there, and the genius as well. So this is a big deal.
Absolutely. It's huge.
So we lead into Dusty Rhodes and the Big Boss Man with Slick. This is a quick match, but lead us through this match. I mean, this is a lot what we see. We mentioned in the beginning in the intro, the introduction as Jesse Ventura introduces her as some old lady, but we know her as Sapphire. So we get to see the combination of the American Dream and the Common Lady.
Yeah, this was a quick outing for both Dusty and the Big Boss Man, but it was very entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Dusty gets the roll up, which is crazy to think Dusty getting a roll up. Misses the Dusty elbow. You're missing all the hot fire going on here, but it was good storytelling. Boss Man, selling the shit out of being pissed off at Dusty. Sapphire looking great out there. It was a great match, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So after the match, after losing, Boss Man's really upset. Dusty is just kind of dancing, doesn't care. He takes Sapphire into the ring. They're doing some more dancing. And we get the relationship between Dusty and Sapphire continuing throughout, and becomes really the crowning moment at WrestleMania 6, taking on Randy Savage and Sensational Sherry. So that is, again, we talked about it before, that's kind of the peak of Dusty Rhodes' career here in WWF, and this is the most featured he's been as far as a character here, and he makes the best of it, man. He tries. Like, the polka dot stuff was, to me, you'll never tell me it's not a rib, but it feels, he's trying here, and fans love him. The music's a hit. Like, they like the act, and it's over the top. It fits what they're doing in 1989.
Yeah, no, having him come out in the promo beginning, I'm a common man. He's selling himself, and he does a great job at it. And obviously, Dusty is just oozing his Dusty mannerisms and his machismo and all of his good stuff. So I love it. Like, Dusty made a prime rib sandwich out of shit, and he did a great job.
So we get the second appearance of Mr. Perfect and the Genius taking on the Red Rooster. So this match was supposed to happen at SummerSlam, but it was cut short due to an injury. So this rematch is better by default because it was cut short due to the injury, and Perfect slaps the chicken feed out of Taylor's mouth to start the match, and we know Perfect's going to get the win here. How they get there was unique. Of course, Mr. Perfect and Terry Taylor, two great workers in a different lifetime, with Terry Taylor being presented in a different way. This could have went 35 minutes, not just 5 minutes, but this was emphasis on Mr. Perfect and the Genius at ringside to further getting Mr. Perfect's winning streak continuing, being a main eventer. Perfect blocks a hip toss. He puts Taylor away with the Perfect Plex. That's the main thing here. Red Rooster gets some offense in, but not much. Mr. Perfect goes over in a big way, and really they're setting him up for 19. Like, it feels like he's on the verge of winning the 1990 Rumble. That's what it feels like. He's right there. The fact that they didn't go with it seems crazy to me, especially with how much they're building and all the stock they're putting into this winning streak.
Yeah, no, they slapped a rock on him, and then once he got out of the atmosphere, they were like, slow down, a little too fast.
So we head to our main event of the evening, the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, taking on the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard with Bobby Heenan in a 2 out of 3 falls match. So I'll let you take the lead here. They lost the tag titles, so this is not for the titles. They recently lost the Demolition, as I referenced, on October 2nd. Or October 4th, earlier in October. Here we sit with this 2 out of 3 falls match, which, like I said, work rate wise, like, they have a lot to live up to, but you guys are up for the task.
No, this was again not as good as the last outing, but this stands up as one of the best 2 out of 3 falls matches we think we've covered, right? Like, this is fantastic. Good shit. The Rockers get the first win. Tully just didn't have enough, so he got pinned. But we get Heenan out there going back and forth. We get a super kick party from the Rockers going into second fall. The Brainbusters get them. So we're like 5 minutes into it. It goes by relatively quick, which was my takeaway from it. I wish it would have let it breathe a little bit more, but obviously it's a Saturday night's main event in the same pay-per-view, so we're rocking and rolling. Shockingly, I was expecting the Brainbusters to get that last fall, but we got the Rockers coming in hot, man. 8 minutes, 51 seconds. Like I said, it could have been breathing a little bit more. I would have loved to see a little bit more time on it, but it was a hot 2 out of 3 falls tag match, and I absolutely loved it, man. Rockers, great outing. Last run for Arn and Tully, absolutely fantastic. This is one of my favorite matches I think we've covered here. Even though it didn't live up to the last one, it was still damn good.
Yeah, this reminded me of a Young Bucks FTR match, just a little bit
Yes.
not as stretched out. Like, this was a different iteration of what eventually became FTR and the Young Bucks, but the ending was cool. I mean, the Brainbusters going for the spike pile driver on Marty, looking to put him away, and then Shawn punches Tully off the top and delivers a flying body press out of nowhere on Arn, which is the quick pinfall. The fans go nuts. Like you mentioned, 8 minutes and 51 seconds. Fantastic match between the two teams. I think this is, as I said, this is a renaissance of work rate we're seeing over the course. Like, we were void of this just a few episodes ago, that there was nothing like this, but now it seems like every time out, these two teams are going out there, even with other teams, the ability to have these matches. We mentioned Demolition before. That's kind of up in the work rate. We mentioned the singles match between Rick Martel and Tito Santana. We're getting a little bit more, obviously, with the Bret Hart matches. We got Blue Blazer with Owen Hart. There's been more emphasis on these, work rate, which is great to see. And this is Arn and Tully's last televised match together as a tag team, because obviously Arn's going to return home to NWA in a matter of weeks, and then Tully fell in that drug test and heads home. He has to, kind of, I guess, lick his wounds and come back. And you wonder what could have been. Obviously, it worked out all fine in the end, obviously, with Arn, and he went back to where he's supposed to be. And then same thing with Tully. Like, it almost is a fever dream that they're ever here, because they are such NWA guys. And you want, like, even during the Monday Night Wars with Arn Anderson over in WCW, like, he had to be there. And
yeah, of course,
I think he was such an influential part of everything they were doing. And it's just cool that we got even this short run of just months, not even a year. We got months of the Brainbusters here on this roster, and it's so memorable.
Yeah.
People reference this time and look at it as just, I don't know. I just think they didn't have time to mess it up. That, like, the creative, they burned bright for just this amount of time, and they went on to do other things, and they brought the NWA flavor to the WWF, which made the product better, which just speaks volume of what wrestling should be. In a lot of ways, it should be a buffet where they should have things like this on the card, not just cartoony characters. You show that there's an audience, even the general casual audience gravitates towards work rate, and that's what the Brainbusters did. And of course, the Rockers went out there and showed what they can do. Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, amazing.
No, absolutely. And I was trying to pinpoint what the hell this match had flavoring of, and you said it so, and it went right over my head. FTR and the Bucks, man, and it was beautiful. It absolutely was, and it's crazy.
So before we say goodbye to Saturday's main event, Mr. Perfect and Genius are in the back, and they are breaking the WWF Championship belt with the hammer after stealing it. So Perfect suggests the WWF title belt can only be perfect when it's around his waist. So until he gets a title shot, he will keep breaking up Hogan's belts. No matter which ones you replace it with, I will continue to destroy them. And Mean Gene gets a hold of what remains of the WWF Championship and hands it to Hogan. And Hogan said, he's upset, man. This is his baby. Watching the title being broken in half and seeing the title in this shape causes, he looks like he's distraught, man. Like, as I said, emo Hogan emerges again. He's popping on the My Chemical Romance, 3 Cheers to Sweet Revenge, trying to gather the energy to go attack Mr. Perfect and get his title back. But he's sitting up in his room listening to Angels and Airwaves with his Tom DeLonge haircut. And
put on an eyeliner,
I don't know if it's true, though. There's always the rumor and innuendo that this became the WWF Hardcore Championship 8 years later or 9 years later. I don't know if that's true. I think they was debunked, right?
I don't know. I always thought
it makes sense that it would be like they would keep it somewhere and then like
why
bring it back
would
out,
you,
right?
What are you going to do? Throw out the title? You know what I mean? Like obviously they stored it away from somewhere. Maybe it was. Listen, if it was, that's even cooler, right?
Let's look it up while we're on here. So let me just look it up quick. So
yeah, no, it's not like Vince went and bought a replica title, from High Spots and fucking smashed it up and put some tape on it. It was like, oh, we're gonna call it the hardcore title. Like, I think it would be cool if they kept it and kind of rehashed it. I don't see why they wouldn't.
All right, so here it is on Squared Circle. It says the WWF Mr. Perfect smashed belt on Saturday Night's Main Event was not later used as the hardcore title. Let's see what it says. So this was from a guy named Belt Fan Dan. He said, someone asked me about this the other day, and I remember all the controversy it caused outside the belt forums. I thought it would be cool to repost this because many people are new and weren't around in the Slam Fan days. Discuss it. Also, there's great confusion among fans about the belt and its origins. And he said, although not 100% positive, I believe this belt started out as the new winged eagle that debuted at WrestleMania 5. Randy Savage came out with his customized winged eagle, and it seemed as if they presented Hogan with the new belt after winning the match. This belt had a customization like Hulk Hogan on the belt. Instead of champion, reverted back to traditional strap title, like the smaller strap, blah, blah, blah. So we go back to Mr. Perfect coming out with the belt, proceeded to destroy it with the hammer to send a message to Hogan. For years after the night, many people wonder what happened to that belt. Some believe it was simply thrown away, but the majority of fans believe the WWF Hardcore title was made from the belt destroyed that night in 1989. The truth, though, after being destroyed, Hulk Hogan's WWF belt, as many of the pieces that could be found were collected and eventually ended up in a private collection of then WWF referee Mel Phillips. Mel maintained possession of the belt until I acquired it through one of his merchandise sales in 2007. After confirming its authenticity with Dave Milligan, I put the belt on eBay. The auction news story made numerous sites, including the Wrestling Observer newsletter, causing the auction to receive over 15,000 views. Seems the overwhelming response from fans was that I was full of crap. They refused to believe that someone would keep a broken belt in a bag of pieces for over 15 years. I provided numerous amounts of proof on various websites, including video of the Saturday Night Main Event before, after, and pics of my belt. I also posted comparison pics of my belt and the hardcore belt. The hardcore belt was all gold, not dual-plated like the Saturday Night Main Event belt. The hardcore belt had breaks in different spots. After finally proving that I just got flamed, either people figured it was worthless, and though $10,000 bid on eBay was crazy, and people thought I was actually Mel Phillips, and I received a huge amount of emails calling me a liar. I did not sell the belt on eBay, but I did sell it to a private collector for a respectable amount of money. The $10,000 bid was not really meant to sell. It was meant about advertising, trying to get a private sale. I listed some of the ring used belt on eBay, continue, blah, blah, blah. Wikipedia page for the hardcore title was incorrect for years, along with numerous other people tried to edit it. One of the wiki moderators for the wrestling section is an egomaniac who reverts every edit to numerous wrestling pages because it does not seem to fit his beliefs. So essentially, after checking in, it seems that the wiki page for the hardcore title somewhat is accurate now. But yeah, so not the title. So
crazy.
Absolutely
Absolutely crazy.
Breaking news here, right here. I mean, this dude had this belt with bags of pieces. I don't know how that referee wound up with the title, but I mean, maybe he's a friend of Hogan or just like happened to be picked it up from the garbage can. Cause like, I think back in the day when Yankee Stadium was renovated for the first time, or, and they were just leaving the chairs out in the street because memorabilia didn't exist like that. So people were just like grabbing them, not understanding the value of things. And maybe that was the case back then.
No, absolutely. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. He just pickpocketed it. He put it in his, he got his payday from Vince, and then he was like, oh, I'm going to take this and put it in my pocket and walk out.
Well, I mean, think about any sort of show you've been on. Like people that they use a door, they go through it. The door goes in the garbage. Yeah. I mean, if you happen to be on an independent show with someone who becomes like the biggest star in the world, you could say you have this door from the match they had.
100%.
If you have a mindset to be forward thinking of, maybe this dude back in the day, maybe he just wanted a memento from that day or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm more the power to him.
I would have definitely took the title belt. That
100%.
All right, well, let's get to the chaser. We'll pick our favorite part of the week and what we liked best from these two episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event.
The chaser.
All right, so we had two episodes to cover, episode 23 and 24. Belcaster, what did you walk away thinking was your favorite part of these nights?
I could easily give it to Lonnie and Hogan and just how great that was because it was fantastic. But the work rate in me, the work rate guy in me has to give it to obviously the Rockers and the Brainbusters because how can you not? It was just so damn good and just a beautiful match.
Man, I agree with you. I love that match, but I'm going to go with the Genius and Hulk Hogan. I thought this match was so well told. It fit the storyline perfect, and pun completely intended. And I just thought it just progressed the story really well. And I love to see an underdog like the Genius, even in heel capacity, get the W here. This is what Saturday Night's Main Event's all about, using the platform to expand different characters. And it's not all about the faces winning. Sometimes you have to have, the champion facing some adversity. And what's more embarrassing than losing to enhancement talent? It really set the stage for Mr. Perfect being a main eventer. Further emphasizes the missed opportunity they had with him. He should have won the 1990 Rumble and went on to win the championship somewhere down the line. Maybe in between, you can always put the title back on Hogan leading into WrestleMania 6. Like, you could have done that and then had a short run, maybe even for a few months. Like, say he had, I don't know, we're here in November. Maybe you have him win the title in December, and then fast forward to January to really get things cooking. 2 months, maybe a 2-month run. Like, I think Mr. Perfect deserved that.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's a shame that he never got that at all throughout his whole entire career.
Yeah, I guess you could make the argument these are the type of guys, like I mentioned the Mount Rushmore guys that never hold the championship. You can make the argument that they're guys that never needed it. I think in Roddy Piper's book that he wrote, he talked about not really wanting to be champion and just understanding that he was bigger than the championship belt. And that might sound egotistical to some people, but that is part of being a star that doesn't need the championship. And I think he would have helped it. I think Roddy Piper could have been a guy who helped even further his legacy and the people around him if he was the guy in main events with the title belt around his waist.
100%, man.
Well, let's close the tab. Let's get ready for next week. We're going to preview the shows next week. We've got some shilling in here and get our weekend started here in the second week of November. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, as the lights come on in the bar here, we are getting ready to close the tab and get out of here to start our weekends. Next week's show we're going to be doing is episode 13 of season 5, airing on November 17th, 2023, as we inch closer to Thanksgiving, believe it or not. We're going to be covering 3 episodes. Saturday Night's Main Event number 25 from January 27th, 1990. The main event number 3 on February 23rd, 1990. And finishing up with Saturday Night's Main Event number 26, April 28th, 1990. So we're cruising through 1990. We're going to be doing the build-up to WrestleMania 6 and the fallout. So we are quickly approaching, really, I mean, the end of what we know Saturday Night's Main Event of. It doesn't last that much longer. We are sitting here, episode 13. We don't have that much left to go here, but we are definitely enjoying the ride here. It's flying by, but I'm looking forward to next week and the weeks beyond, Belcaster.
No, absolutely, man. This has been a very delightful journey so far, and obviously I wasn't expecting anything else. But the quick watches, the fun, the vastness of having your Lanny Pofflo's versus Hulk Hogan's for the WWF title, it makes this such a very, very fun ride, and I'm enjoying the shit out of it, man. Absolutely.
So as we approach next week, of course, it's Friday here at the Tavern. We are getting ready, of course, audio if you're listening to it's Saturday, so hopefully you're enjoying your weekend, getting ready for Thanksgiving, get all the festivities ready. But Belcaster, lead us through. I know you guys had a great Fig Night this week. You guys are sharing a night now with Raw Down on Tuesday, so you guys got
brother.
You guys got some fellows to join you on that day, so Tuesday's not so lonely anymore. But what else is going on in the Mike Belcaster world?
Oh, man, you guys make sure you tune in to Fig Night because I got to open up this bad Mamma Jana, Commissioner Foley. Found him on the shelves. Very happy to pop him off. Super, super excited to get that one. But we also have some new AEW in the house. We got the newest Jon Moxley that we opened up. And we also have this beautiful Thunder Rosa, which I was super stoked to add to the collection. Make sure you tune in. You get to see him out of the box. It's a little different than you get to see here. So good stuff. I was beyond shocked to find Commissioner Foley in all of his greatness with his little cactus plant. Gotta love it. I'm obviously a Mick Foley guy, so happy to get that into the collection. But Fig Night was a blast, as always. I'll be running solo next week, so make sure you guys tune in and support. We're rocking and rolling. But yeah, man, it's always a good time down at the Tavern. So make sure you guys tune in to Thursday of this coming week. Of course, we have Brace for Impact covering all things Impact / TNA Wrestling as we approach January Hard to Kill for the rebrand. Mondays, Wrestling Tonight, dropping at 7 p.m. on video. Tuesday mornings,
on audio, covering all things pro wrestling. We're, of course, talking about previewing events and talking about the build to Survivor Series and the build towards Full Gear, all that amazing stuff. And, of course, you find us right here on Friday evenings, setting the tone here for the weekend, getting things ready for Saturday night's main event, and everything goes into that. So this has been a blast, man. This has been a great journey, having such a blast covering these things. And the best part about doing this is comparing it to the history. And I know we talk about it every season. It seems almost cliche at this point, but talking about really how history repeats itself, Belcaster. Like, I think a lot of what we do here is appropriate to what happens in the wrestling world today.
Absolutely, man. If we didn't cover Saturday night's main event, who knows what Collision would have looked like? There would not be these awesome promo packages in the beginning. There wouldn't be no Elton John. Who knows?
So as you guys know, and we told you, we will be having 18 episodes of this season. This is episode 12. So we have episode 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Whew. Ending the season on our last will be Friday, December 22nd, the week before Christmas. We're going to be ending, and we're taking a break, a pretty decently long break here for a shot of nostalgia. We'll be returning for season 6 for NXT, Black and Yellow, all the takeovers in July 2024. So don't fret, though. You're going to be getting audio drops every Saturday morning. We're going to be re-releasing WCW Season 1 of 1996. So you're going to be, for all those that were clamoring to get the audio releases that don't consume on YouTube or don't watch Twitch or Twitter, or that's not how you watch your podcast or listen to them, I should say. They're going to be on audio, Spotify, Apple, all of the other sort of audio platforms that are out there, re-releasing them. So, we're going to have content that is evergreen on the audio platform. So stay tuned for that. So that first week will be December 29th. That will be the episode 1 of season 1, 1996. And I'm definitely going to go back and listen because I haven't heard them since we recorded them. And I wonder, as they progress, one of my favorite seasons, man.
Yeah.
WCW 1996 will forever live fondly in my heart.
100%, man. Likewise, I'm super excited for not only our listeners to hear it, but I'm also excited to take that journey again, man. 1996 WCW was such a blast. So fun to cover. It was all over the place. It went from, just like Saturday night's main event did, it went from super, super hokey to not knowing what the hell's going on to possibly the hottest period in pro wrestling up until this year. I mean, it's insane.
Well, that's all we got for you. Jesse Ventura is going to lead us out here. We didn't get a lot of Jesse impressions here, but he's still here. He's going to lead us out,
He's
right?
still here. He's hanging out. He's watching Dusty. He wasn't trying to overstep the bounds of Sapphire and all of its majesticness, right, McMahon? But listen, you guys tuned into all the great stuff from tonight's Saturday night's main event right here, Shot of Nostalgia, Turnbuckle Tavern. I'm Jesse the Body Ventura. I'm getting in my Tesla. We're going to McDonald's. We're going to get a Big Mac and some fries. Let's go do it, big man.